The bell above my store door chimed, a soft sound that usually made me smile, but not that day. Because the woman who walked in was her. Silk blouse, diamond bracelet, perfume that screamed money and victory. She looked around like she owned the place, eyes sliding over the shelves before landing on me. And then that smirk, the same one she wore when she showed up at the courthouse with my ex-husband on her arm. "Wow," she said, her voice dripping honey and venom. "So this is where you ended up, a little grocery store? Cute." I froze behind the counter, my hand still clutching the scanner. For a second, I couldn't even breathe. She picked up a carton of milk, examined it, and placed it on the counter. "You know, when I first heard you opened a shop, I thought, how kind of her, trying to be independent after everything." She leaned closer, her perfume choking me. "But seeing it now, I realize it's just survival, isn't it?" The customers nearby pretended to browse, but I could feel their ears tilt our way. My cheeks burned. I smiled, a brittle curve. "Would you like a bag?" Her laugh was sharp. "No need. I have someone who carries things for me now." The words sliced through me. I pictured him, my ex, probably waiting outside in their shiny SUV. The man I once loved, the man who promised forever. I rang up her items, every beep of the scanner pounding against my ribs. She paid with a gold card, her manicured nails tapping the counter. "You must get lonely here," she said sweetly. "Especially during Thanksgiving. No husband, no family, just you and your cash register." I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. Then, the sound of a bus braking outside. The store door burst open and a small voice shouted, "Mom!" My son, my little boy, ran in, backpack swinging, cheeks red from the cold. He held up something in his tiny hands, a handmade card, edges uneven, colors spilling beyond the lines. "Look, Mom, I made this at school, it's for you." The woman turned, startled. The card read in wobbly letters, "Thank you, Mom, for everything you do." He grinned, proud and breathless. Everyone was making cards for their parents, and I told them I wanted to make one just for my mom. I knelt down, my throat closing. Tears blurred the messy crayon drawing. A house, a woman smiling, a boy holding her hand. I hugged him tight, my whole world fitting perfectly in my arms. Behind me, the woman's smile faltered. I looked up at her, still holding my son. "You asked if I was lonely," I said quietly. "But with him, I have everything I need." Her face stiffened. She opened her mouth but said nothing. The bell chimed again as she left, the door closing behind her, and for the first time in a long while, the silence felt warm. I held the card close, feeling the paper tremble slightly in my hands. I didn't know it yet, but that small, childish drawing would change everything. It was the beginning of my return, my strength, my story. That night, after she left my store, I couldn't sleep. The sound of her laugh still echoed in my head. That perfect, cruel tone that used to haunt me long before the divorce was final. I sat by the window, the store sign outside flickering in the dark. My son was asleep in the next room, his handmade card taped proudly to the fridge. I stared at it for a long time before whispering to myself, "How did I end up here?" A few years ago, my life looked completely different. I was a wife, a partner. I thought I was loved. We had a big house in the suburbs, shiny floors, weekend brunches with his colleagues. I used to wear dresses he picked out for me. I believed that was happiness. But beneath it all, there were cracks I chose not to see. He started coming home later, smelling of expensive perfume that wasn't mine. When I asked, he said, "Work dinners, you wouldn't understand." Then one night I found a text message, short but sharp enough to break my world. "Can't wait to see you again, love." Same hotel? I confronted him, trembling, still hoping he'd deny it. Instead, he sighed like I was the problem. "You've changed," he said. "You're not the woman I married." Those words shattered something inside me. He left a month later. For her. The same woman who smiled in my store today. The divorce took everything. The house, the friends who quietly picked sides, even the confidence I used to carry so easily. All I had left was a small savings account and a dream I buried long ago, to open my own grocery shop. Everyone told me it was foolish. "You should move on, find someone else," they said. But I needed to build something that was mine, something no one could take away again. So I rented an old storefront on the corner of Maple Street. The paint was peeling, the lights flickered, and the shelves were secondhand. But it was mine. And then came him, my son. Not by birth, but by choice. He was the son of my distant cousin who passed away in an accident. No one else in the family wanted to take him. I remember the first time I saw him, quiet eyes, clutching a toy car, too afraid to speak. I reached out and said, "You don't have to be scared, you can stay with me." He didn't answer, he just nodded. Since that day, it's been just the two of us, learning to build a small, quiet happiness out of broken pieces. But deep down, I still carried guilt. For not being enough. For letting my marriage fall apart. For being the woman people whispered about when I passed by. Sometimes at night, I still dream of the moment he left, his footsteps echoing down the hall, the door closing softly, like an ending too polite to hurt, but it did anyway. And yet tonight, when I looked at my son's crayon drawing, the one that said "Thank you, Mom," something inside me shifted. Maybe I wasn't as broken as I thought. Maybe I had already rebuilt something stronger. What I didn't know then was that the past I tried to bury wasn't done with me yet. There were things I hadn't seen, things that would soon come to light and change everything I thought I knew about my ex and her. Mornings at the store were always the same. The smell of freshly brewed coffee, the creak of the old front door, the hum of the refrigerator that I kept meaning to replace but never could. It was my rhythm. Slow, steady, predictable. Neighbors stopped by for their usual. Mrs. Callahan wanted her oat milk. Mr. Dwyer picked up the newspaper even though he could read it online. People liked my store because it felt like a piece of the past, small, warm, familiar. I liked it because it kept my mind busy. After the divorce, I stopped going to the fancy supermarkets and charity galas where my ex and I used to smile for pictures. Now, my life was aisles and shelves, receipts and laughter from my boy. And honestly, I preferred it that way. But in small towns, peace is fragile. Everyone knows everyone. Everyone remembers everything. And sometimes, whispers move faster than truth. One afternoon as I was stacking apples, two women lingered by the counter. I heard them whispering, not loud enough to be cruel, but loud enough for me to hear. "Did you know her ex-husband's company just opened a new branch in town?" "Really? I thought they moved away." "Oh, they did. But apparently he's investing here again. And she, his new wife, she's supposed to manage it." My hand froze midair. The apples slipped, rolling across the floor. I smiled like nothing happened, but inside, my chest tightened. So, she wasn't just visiting that day. She was moving here, back into my town, my street, my life. That night, after closing, I walked home with my son's hand in mine. The streetlights flickered. The wind smelled of rain. He skipped ahead, humming some silly school song, while my thoughts churned. I'd spent years rebuilding myself, brick by fragile brick. I couldn't let her presence shake that again. Still, something gnawed at me. Why would she come here? Why this town of all places? A week later, I got my answer. A flyer appeared on my store window. A shiny new supermarket was opening 2 blocks away. Modern, bright, full of discounts I could never match. At the bottom of the flyer, printed in small, elegant letters, was her name. I felt my stomach drop. The customers began to talk. "Have you heard? They'll have everything. Delivery, online ordering, imported goods." I nodded, pretending not to care, but the truth burned inside me. I knew what this was. She wasn't just back to flaunt her life. She wanted to erase mine. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked to the fridge and looked at my son's Thanksgiving card again. It reminded me why I started this. For stability. For him. For dignity. Still, something strange caught my eye. The corner of the card had curled up, revealing a faint pencil mark beneath. Words my son must have written before tracing over them in crayon. It said, "Thank you, Mom, for never giving up." Even when he didn't come back. My heart skipped. He never talked about my ex. Not once. But those words, "when he didn't come back," made me wonder how much my boy actually knew. Was there something he'd seen? Something he hadn't told me? For the first time in a long while, I felt it again. That quiet sense that the past wasn't done knocking on my door. The grand opening of her supermarket was impossible to ignore. Banners hung across Main Street, music blasted from speakers, and cars lined the block. The whole town showed up, free samples, balloons, champagne. I watched from across the street, standing in front of my little store, hands buried in my apron. My sign was old and peeling. Hers glowed like a crown. She spotted me. Even from that distance, I could see the smile spread across her face. Slow, deliberate, poisonous. She waved. I didn't. Later that week, I noticed the shift. My regular customers stopped coming as often. They'd wave politely but walk past to her place. "It's cheaper," one woman whispered apologetically. "You understand, right?" I nodded. I did. But understanding didn't make it hurt less. Then the rumors started. "She said you used to steal from your husband's business," a supplier told me one morning, eyes uneasy. "She says that's why he divorced you." My stomach clenched. "That's not true." He shrugged helplessly. "I know, but people talk." And just like that, my world began to shrink again, shelf by shelf, customer by customer. One afternoon, she came in, no reason, just to look around. Her perfume filled the store before she even spoke. She picked up a jar of jam, inspected it, then placed it down with a sneer. "Still open?" she asked sweetly. "I thought maybe you'd close already, but I guess some people just don't know when to quit." I forced a smile. "Business is fine." "Really?" She leaned closer. "Because my husband mentioned you used to handle the accounting back when you two were married. I can't imagine how you managed that, considering, well, your current level." Her words hit harder than I expected. It wasn't just pride, it was humiliation. She wasn't here to talk, she was here to ruin me. Then she placed something on the counter, a glossy flyer for her store, right next to my cash register. "You can give these to your customers," she said. "They might appreciate better prices." I stared at the flyer, then at her hand. On her finger was the ring that once belonged to me, simple gold, small diamond. My ex never bought another. He gave her mine. I felt something twist deep inside. She smiled, turned to leave, then paused by the door. "Oh," she said lightly, "and tell your son I said hello. He's adorable, looks just like—" She stopped mid-sentence, eyes glinting as if catching herself from revealing too much. Then she smiled again. "Never mind." The bell chimed as she walked out, leaving the door half open, her perfume lingering like poison. I stood frozen behind the counter. My heart pounded. What did she mean by that? Looks just like who? I rushed to the small back room, where my son's old baby photo sat on a shelf. His round cheeks, his eyes, warm brown, same as mine. But now, looking closer, something else flickered in them. Something I'd never noticed before. It couldn't be. No, I shook my head, forcing the thought away. But the seed was planted. Her words, her smirk, they all carried a shadow of truth I wasn't ready to face. For the first time since the divorce, I wasn't just angry. I was afraid. It happened on a Saturday, the day I thought things couldn't get worse. The town was hosting the Thanksgiving market fair, right on Main Street. Every store had a booth to sell their goods. I decorated mine with pumpkins and cinnamon candles, hoping to make a little profit before the holidays. My son had painted a cardboard sign, "Mom's Store, homemade and kind." His handwriting made me smile. For a few hours, it felt normal again. People bought cookies, laughed, and even complimented my apple pie. I started to think maybe I could still survive this. Then she arrived. The crowd parted like she owned the street. Perfect hair, flawless coat, the same red lipstick she always wore, the kind that left marks on other people's husbands. She had her staff set up a huge booth right across from mine, bright lights, banners, and free gift bags. Every eye turned to her. She saw me and smiled. "Hi there," she said loudly, her voice carrying over the music. "Still selling those homemade pies? How sweet." Her tone was syrupy, but her eyes glinted with cruelty. People around us stopped to watch. I straightened my apron. Yes, people seem to like them. "Oh, I'm sure they do." She picked up one of my pies, turning it in her manicured hands. "It's charming, like something from before refrigeration." Laughter rippled through the crowd. My chest burned. I reached for the pie, but she didn't hand it back. Instead, she said, "You know, my husband used to love apple pie too. You baked for him, didn't you? Back when things were better for you." The laughter stopped. A hush fell. I froze, the pie trembling in my hands. I could feel every stare, pity, curiosity, gossip. Her voice softened, almost fake sympathetic. "It must be strange seeing me live the life that was supposed to be yours." I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. My throat was tight, my heart hammering. Then I heard a small voice behind me. "Mom?" My son was standing there, clutching a brown paper bag, eyes wide. I hadn't noticed the school bus had dropped him off early. He looked from me to her, confusion flickering on his little face. "Why is she talking to you like that?" The woman turned to him, crouched slightly. "Oh, sweetheart, I was just telling your mom how brave she is. You must be proud of her." He frowned. "I am." The crowd murmured. She straightened, clearly irritated by his answer. She placed the pie back on my table, leaned close, and whispered, low enough for only me to hear, "You really should tell him the truth, before someone else does." My blood ran cold. "What truth?" I whispered back. She smirked. "Ask him who he looks like." Then she stepped away, turning to the crowd with a bright, perfect smile. "Everyone, come try our modern pies. Freshly baked, unlike some old recipes from the past." Laughter broke again. This time it was sharp, cruel, echoing. I stood frozen, my son tugging at my sleeve. "Mom, can we go home?" I nodded, fighting tears. My hands shook as I packed the remaining pies into a box. The fair continued around me, music, laughter, chatter, but it all felt distant, muffled, like I was underwater. As we walked away, my son slipped his small hand into mine. "It's okay, Mom," he said softly. "You still make the best pie." I smiled through the blur. "Thank you, honey." But inside, my heart was breaking, not just from shame but from fear. Because the way she said truth, it sounded like a warning. And I had no idea what storm was coming next. For days after the fair, I couldn't bring myself to open the store. The shelves stood still, untouched. The closed sign hanging like a wound on the glass door. The humiliation clung to me like smoke. Every time I stepped outside, I imagined whispers behind every curtain. "That's her, the ex-wife, the one who got replaced." I barely slept. When I did, I dreamed of laughter, her laughter, and woke with my hands gripping the sheets, heart pounding. My son tried to cheer me up. He'd draw little hearts on my coffee mug, leave sticky notes saying, "You're the best, Mom." But even his small kindnesses made me ache more, because I didn't want him to see me like this, a woman broken by someone else's cruelty. One morning I found him sitting at the kitchen table, coloring quietly. He looked up and asked, "Mom, why did that lady say I look like someone?" I froze. My voice cracked when I answered, "She was just being mean, sweetheart. Don't listen to her." He studied my face, then nodded, but his eyes said he didn't believe me. After he left for school, I sat there for a long time, staring at the half-empty coffee cup. The silence of the house felt heavier than ever. Around noon, I forced myself to go back to the store. The place smelled like dust and stale air. Bills piled on the counter, rent, supplier notices, overdue payments. I traced my finger over each one, feeling the weight of failure pressing down. Then I saw something. A small envelope slid under the door. No name, no return address. Inside was a photograph. My breath caught. It was my ex-husband, years ago, before the divorce, holding a baby. My baby. My son. Except, I wasn't in that picture. He was standing in front of a hospital room smiling. The date on the back was from the same week my cousin, the boy's biological mother, had her accident. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped it. I flipped the photo over again. There, faint but visible, was handwriting in blue ink. He knew. My knees gave out. I sank to the floor, clutching the photo. He knew. Knew what? That I adopted my cousin's child? That he helped arrange it? Or was it something darker? For a long time, I just sat there, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, trying to breathe. My mind was a storm, pieces of memories crashing into each other. I remembered the way my ex looked at the baby when I first brought him home. The hesitation, the strange tenderness, the way he'd avoided answering when I asked if he wanted to hold him. And her words at the fair. "You should tell him the truth." My pulse raced. Was there something about my son that tied her to him? Something I never knew? That night, I couldn't stop pacing. I took the photo and hid it under my pillow, afraid someone might take it. The store was dark, silent. My reflection in the window looked hollow, unfamiliar. A woman who had lost everything but still hadn't found peace. I whispered into the darkness, "What are you hiding from me?" For the first time in years, the sadness began to shift. Not into strength, not yet, but into anger. Quiet, burning anger. And somewhere deep inside, I knew this wasn't over. She wanted to destroy me, but she didn't realize she'd just given me a reason to fight back. The photograph wouldn't leave my mind. Every time I tried to focus on work, it stared back at me. That perfect picture of my ex holding my son like he belonged to him. I told myself it didn't mean anything. Maybe it was taken by someone at the hospital. Maybe he was just there by chance. But the handwriting on the back, "He knew," kept echoing in my head like a heartbeat. One night, after my son went to bed, I decided to look for answers. I pulled out an old cardboard box from the closet. one I hadn't opened since the divorce. It was full of forgotten things: tax papers, receipts, and a few letters he'd written back when we were still trying to pretend we were happy. At the bottom was a small, sealed envelope with my name on it. I didn't remember ever seeing it before. Inside was a hospital discharge summary, my cousin's name, the date of her death, and a signature that froze my blood. His signature. He had signed as her emergency contact, but that wasn't possible. He barely knew her, or so I thought. My hands trembled as I read through the report. There was a note at the bottom: infant transferred to private care per request of M, expenses covered. No full name, just that initial, M. I whispered it out loud, the sound cracking in my throat. His name started with M. The room spun. Did he arrange the adoption behind my back? Did he already know the child was connected to him in some way? I thought back to all the times he avoided talking about my cousin's death. The way he insisted I take the baby home immediately, promising we'd figure out the paperwork later. And then the woman, his new wife, taunting me at the fair. You should tell him the truth. Was she talking about him being the boy's real father? I covered my mouth, shaking. No, it couldn't be. But another memory surfaced, a family barbecue years ago. My cousin had been there, smiling shyly at him. He'd helped her fix her car that day. I'd teased her about how flustered she looked when he offered her a ride home, and she'd said, "He's kind. You're lucky to have him." Now my stomach twisted. What if their connection went deeper than I ever knew? I spent the next day digging through the adoption records. The local office clerk looked at me kindly but shook her head. "The file's sealed, ma'am. Private arrangement. You'll need a court order to see it." As I walked out of the building, my legs felt heavy, my mind spinning. Outside, I spotted a black cart across the street, tinted windows, engine idling. When I looked closer, it drove off slowly. A chill ran through me. Someone was watching. That night, I found a second envelope taped to my store door. No return address again. Inside, a single sheet of paper. Typed words. "Stop digging. Some truths are better left buried." My fingers went numb. I looked out into the empty street. The neon sign flickered. The world felt suddenly smaller, darker. But fear didn't paralyze me this time. It burned through me, sharp, alive. If someone wanted me to stop, it meant I was close. I folded the note, slipped it into my pocket, and whispered to myself, "No, not this time." I had lost my marriage, my pride, and almost my will to live, but I wasn't losing the truth. Not again. It happened 2 nights later. I was locking up the store when a woman approached, tall, thin, wrapped in a gray coat. Her face was hidden by the hood, her steps cautious. "Are you her?" she asked softly. "The woman who adopted the baby years ago?" My breath caught. "Who are you?" She looked around, nervous. "I used to work at the hospital. I shouldn't be here." Her voice trembled, but I couldn't stay quiet anymore. She handed me a brown envelope. "Everything's inside. Just be careful. They don't want you to know." Before I could speak, she turned and disappeared into the dark. My hands shook as I opened the envelope. Inside were photocopies, medical forms, DNA test results, and a letter signed by the hospital administrator. The first line stole the air from my lungs. Patient, my cousin's name, pregnancy confirmed, father identified as my ex-husband's full name. I stared at it until the letters blurred. He was the father. My husband, the baby I'd raised, my son, was his child with my cousin. My knees buckled. I sat on the cold floor of the store, clutching the papers to my chest, tears spilling down my face. Every memory twisted in my mind. The way he looked at the baby, his insistence that I keep him, his refusal to discuss my cousin's death. He'd known. All this time. He let me believe I was doing something selfless, adopting out of kindness, when in truth, I'd been cleaning up his sin. And she, his new wife, she'd known too. That's why she mocked me. Why she whispered, "You should tell him the truth." They'd built their perfect life on my pain, on lies I didn't even know I was living. The paper slipped from my hands. I felt hollow, stripped of everything I thought I was. But then, through the blur of tears, I saw my son's crayon card still taped to the fridge behind the counter. "Thank you, Mom." That single line anchored me. He wasn't a mistake. He wasn't a reminder of betrayal. He was mine. The blood in his veins didn't matter. The love did. I wiped my face, breathing hard. "They used me," I whispered. "But they won't break me." The next morning, I drove to the address listed on the hospital documents, an old office building now closed. I found a janitor sweeping the hallway and showed him the photo of my ex. "Yeah, I remember him," the man said. "He came here a lot that year, paid cash, said he was arranging something private before the accident." My heart sank. "The accident?" He hesitated. "Your cousin's car. People said it was a brake failure, but there was talk she'd been seen arguing with him the night before." The air left my lungs. "Arguing about what?" He shrugged. "Something about telling his wife the truth." I felt the world tilt. So she'd threatened to tell me. And the next day, she was dead. My hands went cold. It couldn't be coincidence. When I left the building, I noticed the same black car parked across the street again. The engine started when I stepped outside. It didn't follow me this time. It just waited, watching. I knew then that I wasn't just uncovering betrayal. I was stepping into danger. But this time, I didn't run. I looked straight at the car, my heart steady for the first time in years. "You took everything from me," I whispered. "Now it's my turn." And I turned away, ready to fight. I didn't cry again after that night. Something inside me had burned out, and what remained was sharp, quiet, steady. Pain had done its job. It had stripped me down until all that was left was truth. The next morning, I looked at myself in the mirror. My reflection was pale, eyes swollen, hair tangled, but behind that I saw something fierce. I hadn't seen her in years. I took a pair of scissors and cut my hair. Each snip sounded like freedom. Then I cleaned the store, every shelf, every corner, as if I could scrape away every trace of the woman who'd once begged for love and mercy. By noon, the place looked new. By evening, so did I. But this wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about reclaiming what was stolen. My dignity, my name, my truth. I started digging again, legally this time. I contacted a lawyer who used to work with my ex back in the day, an older man named Mr. Harris. He'd left the company years ago after ethical disagreements. When I told him what I'd found, he went quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I always suspected something. Meet me tomorrow. I'll bring files." That night, I opened the store for the first time in a week. The lights glowed warm, the air smelled of cinnamon again. People trickled in, a few familiar faces, a few new ones. Mrs. Callahan smiled shyly. "We missed you, dear. The other store, it doesn't feel right." I thanked her, heart swelling. One by one, people began returning. Not because my prices were better, but because they trusted me. And that was something money couldn't buy. When I closed up, my son came running from the back room, holding a small wooden box. "Look, Mom, I made this for you at school." Inside was a tiny carved bird, wings spread wide. "It's you," he said proudly. "You're flying again." I hugged him tight, tears stinging my eyes. "Yes, sweetheart, I am." The next day, I met Mr. Harris at a quiet cafe outside town. He brought a folder full of documents, financial reports, transaction logs, emails. He pointed to a line highlighted in yellow. "That payment here," he said, "was labeled consulting fee, but it went to a private account belonging to the woman your husband was seeing, your cousin, months before her accident." My chest tightened. He was paying her? "Not just paying her," he said grimly. "He was paying for silence. She wanted to tell you the truth, but she hesitated until she found out she was pregnant. After that, she threatened to expose him. And then, the accident happened. The room went cold. He slid another document toward me, a copy of my ex's insurance policy. If she'd gone public, he'd have lost everything: reputation, contracts, the company. He had motive. I stared at the papers, my pulse steady. "Do you have proof?" "Not yet," he said. "But if you want justice, we can get it." I nodded slowly. For the first time, my fear was gone. That night, I stood in front of my store window, watching the reflection of the town lights. My son slept in the back room, peaceful, unaware of the storm that had shaped him. I whispered to my reflection, "You took my peace, my love, my innocence. But you forgot one thing: I'm still standing." Then I turned off the lights and smiled. Tomorrow, I would stop surviving. Tomorrow, I would start fighting. The town's annual Thanksgiving charity gala was held at the new convention hall. Sponsored, of course, by their supermarket. For years I'd avoided those events. This time, I bought a ticket. When I walked in, heads turned. I wore a simple black dress, my hair short and neat, no jewelry but confidence. The whispers followed. She came, that's her, the ex-wife. Let them talk, I wasn't here to hide anymore. They stood near the stage, my ex and his wife, smiling for cameras. He looked older, thinner, the mask of charm stretched tight. She looked flawless, as always, until she saw me. The smile slipped for a heartbeat. I gave her one back. Calm, controlled, dangerous. The gala began, all lights and speeches about community and family. When my ex took the microphone, I felt the old tremor in my chest, but it wasn't fear anymore. It was focus. Family, he said proudly, is about honesty and trust. We built our business on those values. I stepped forward, my voice cut through the applause. Really? The crowd turned. Silence fell. He froze. Excuse me? I walked toward the stage, holding a folder, the one Mr. Harris had prepared. Because I have proof you built it on something else. Lies, betrayal, and blood. Gasps filled the room. Cameras clicked. He tried to laugh it off. This is inappropriate. I raised the microphone. You hid the fact that my son, our son, was born from your affair with my cousin. You paid her to stay silent, and when she refused, she died in a so-called accident that wasn't an accident at all. The room erupted in murmurs. His wife's face drained of color. I opened the folder and displayed the documents, hospital records, payments, insurance, the DNA report. I kept quiet for years, thinking I was the fool, but not anymore. The truth deserves daylight. Reporters surged forward. People started recording. My ex lunged toward me, hissing, "You don't know what you're doing." "Oh, I do," I said quietly. "I'm finally ending what you started." Security stepped in as chaos broke out. His wife shouted something, denial, excuses, but no one listened. The police, who'd been discreetly waiting thanks to Mr. Harris's coordination, moved in and escorted them both out under investigation. I stood there, heart pounding, but steady. Someone began to clap, then another, then the whole room joined in. It wasn't applause for revenge, it was for truth. Later that night, I walked home through the cool November air. The stars were bright, the town quieter than it had been in years. When I opened the door, my son ran to me. "Mom, you were on TV," I laughed, pulling him close. "Was I?" He nodded, eyes wide. "They said you told the truth and helped the police. Are you okay?" I knelt, holding his face in my hands. "I'm more than okay. I'm free." He smiled, the same sweet smile that had saved me that first day in the store. "Does that mean we can bake pie tomorrow?" I laughed through my tears. "Yes, sweetheart, but this time we'll bake it for us." He ran off to get his crayons, humming. I stood there watching him, feeling the warmth of the small home we'd built, imperfect, honest, and ours. I glanced at the card still on the fridge. "Thank you, Mom." This time the words didn't make me cry. They made me whole. Because I finally understood. I hadn't just survived betrayal. I'd rewritten my story. And as the smell of cinnamon filled the air once more, I whispered to the night, "With him by my side, this is enough." It's been a year since that night at the gala. The air feels different now, lighter, like the town itself took a deep breath and let go. My store is busier than ever, not because of pity or gossip, but because people trust me again. They come for groceries, yes, but they stay to talk, to laugh, to share stories. It's no longer just a store. It's a piece of home. The old sign outside is gone, a new one hangs in its place, hand-painted by my son, Grace and Gratitude Family Market. He said we should name it after the two things that saved us. Sometimes when I'm behind the counter and sunlight hits the glass, I catch my reflection. Older, maybe, but finally at peace. My ex-husband and his wife, they're gone now, facing what they did. Justice came slowly, but it came. And when the court ruled in my favor, I didn't feel triumph, just release. I didn't need revenge, I just needed truth. Last Sunday, my son and I baked pies again, the same recipe, the same cinnamon smell. He laughed when flour got on my nose. I told him he's growing too fast. He said, "That's because you finally smile, Mom. It makes time move quicker." I laughed, but later that night, I understood what he meant. Healing doesn't happen all at once. It happens in small moments. Warm bread, morning light, a child's laughter. Sometimes, when I close the store and look at the stars, I think of everything we survived. The lies, the pain, the loss. And I whisper to myself, we made it. Because we did. We didn't just survive betrayal. We built something new from it. And for the first time in years, I can say, not with bitterness, but with peace. With him by my side, this is enough.